Part 4. Volcanta, the land of the woman. After his visit to the city of El-Kabalam, the healer went to the land of the woman. The queen of this land was lovely, cruel, and heartless, with the skin the color of old ivory, and hair as blue as the wing of a raven. Her hands were as smooth as the skin of a baby, yet she ruled with a fist of iron, and there was none to gainsay her. When her scouts informed her that the great healer was coming, her eyes narrowed, and her smile was that of the tigress. "If we do not greet the stranger," she told her courtiers, as she called them into council, "the people may turn at last against us, for they think him divine, and as you know, they have named him, among other titles, the Lord of Wind and Water. On the other hand, if we do entertain him and allow him to fashion a temple, he may change our manner of living, or so devoutly win the people that they will no longer obey it. Therefore we cannot entertain him." Then off with his head, shouted the courtiers. "Nay, not so fast. Is it said that none can touch him? For his eyes hold his enemies like one frozen in a trance. Then we will ambush him with arrows. Have you not forgotten something? At his wish, the wind and air obey him. We still have another weapon. With poisoned lances we shall spear him. You would use the serpent's weapon. Remember, he can walk on water." The courtiers stood abashed before her. "You mean there is no way to kill him?" "There is one way which you have not mentioned. We shall invite him to the palace. As a prince we shall entertain him. Then the night when he first eats at our table, he shall be given the seat of honor." "Ah," the courtiers sighed in understanding. "When he arises to speak unto us," she purred with the smile of the tigress, "the guard at the door knows my signal. As usual, it is the clap of my two hands that will signify the trap door is to be released. He will find himself in a dungeon, and from this one, as you will know, no man in all of our history has ever come forth into the land of the living." Thus was it planned, and as the prophet entered the city, the adoring people rained flowers upon him. The army of the woman came forth to greet him and escorted him in splendor to the palace. He was given a room with a sunken tiled bath, through which ran an unending stream of warmed and perfumed water, and upon his sleeping couch were laid out for him fresh clean garments made by the loving hands of the people in anticipation of his coming. There were always many to choose from whenever he came to another nation. That afternoon, on the palace rooftop, as he came out to address the people, suddenly the mountain over the city began to belch dark smoke from its summit. The people turned their eyes wide with fear, whispering to one another, "Why is the fire god angry? Is it because he comes among us?" But the pale one, also watching the mountain, raised his arm in his sign of peaceful greeting. With soft words he blessed the mountain. He spoke to the people of its beauty, with its hair of ice and its soft cloud blankets. He told them to fashion their lives in beauty, so that when they came to the land of shadows, there would be no unhappy things to remember. That night all went as planned at the banquet. The healer was given the seat of honor. No one seemed to notice that he spoke very little, that he toyed with his food, but did not eat it. And when at last the eating was finished, with all the laughter and entertainment, the prophet arose and stared at the courtiers. From face to face went the gray-green eyes, until the silence lengthened into unnaturalness. Then suddenly the woman arose, staring imperiously upon him. She clapped her ivory smooth hands, and the prophet fell into the dungeon. Thus had spoken the woman. Then she laughed with high-pitched peals of laughter, which echoed throughout the palace, down the corridors lit by the swinging torches, and upon the high-beamed ceilings. At first uneasy were the eyes of the courtiers. Then one by one they began to join her. Robustly, the guards of her army laughed, and finally all the courtiers, but above them all laughed the woman. Yeah, thus had spoken the woman, then spoken the mountain. With a crash heard into the enemy's kingdom, the whole top of the mountain exploded. Gone was its headdress of ice-white feathers. Gone were the soft cloud blankets. And as the tiger shakes the monkey, so the mountain shook the city. Within the palace, which had rung with laughter, but a breath before the explosion, the great walls swayed and crumbled. Sputtering fireflies, the torches flew into the rubble of cement and stucco. Down came the beams on the banquet table, crushing the wildly screaming courtiers, clinging insanely to one another, even as gophers are crushed when Condora, the lightning, crashes down a forest monarch upon whose roots had been their runways. Only two escaped, a guard and the woman. Where one torch still was crazily swinging, she ran down the corridor screaming. Following her came the long shrieks of horror of the dying. Above the fury of the mountain and the crash of the falling rock and stucco was heard that hideous prelude of death. Into the streets tumbled the people. There they saw two single features. One was the prophet, standing bareheaded and gazing quietly toward the mountain. The other was a guard from the palace, injured and burned from those moments of terror, crawling abjectly toward the healer, babbling out of incoherent story and pointing toward the ruins of the palace. Into the streets staggered the people, carrying their injured and crying children, gazing in unbelief at the mountain, a flaming torch against the heavens, lighting the city like a red sun or a monstrous fiery fountain, flinging upward stars of fury which danced grotesquely about the crimson moon, and returned to earth in a blazing curtain. On the ruins of the palace stood the Pale One, his robe untouched by the rain of cinders. Then he waved to the people toward him, and turning, walked away from the city. Clinging to each other they followed, stumbling through the thick fog of ashes. All night they walked away from the mountain, resting but once, the crowd around him, while he healed their wounds and stroked the burned ones, making whole the flesh beneath his fingers. Then on again to the land of Panaku, near a mighty river, where they stopped and built another city. Here a great pyramid temple was dedicated to the prophet and the mountain. To this day, in the land of Panaku, one can still hear the legend of how the healer came to the land of the woman and was saved from the death by the flaming mountain. The palace of destruction is called the land of the red moon, and the ruins are untouched by the spades of strangers. If one is trusted by the people, they will tell the curious story. When the moon is full, say the people, strange things happen at the palace of destructions. Strangers who go there and stay through the night. When the moon lights up the desolation, swear they can look into the palace. There a torch is crazily swinging as if still heaving from the earthquake. And a woman is heard madly running, followed by the wild perils of laughter, which re-echo throughout the ruined city, ending in stricken shrieks of horror. No stranger will stay there more than one night, and there they always hurriedly leave the country. Is there anyone who will confirm this story? No, for not one of the people could be induced by gifts or money to lead a party to the palace of destruction when the moon is full and the woman is laughing. So perhaps even the location has been forgotten down through the many ages. Georgia, the Thanksgiving ceremony. In the land of Panaku, which shortened from the longer name of the ancients means the place where the serpents land when they fled from burning Pan. The healer met many merchants and saw older cities, some still living and some in ruin. Nearly was fabulous old Axelbob, now rapidly crumbling into the ocean. Into these ports came the traders who brought the copper down from the Northland, Lake Superior, to the southern sea and the Sunrise Ocean. From them he learned their language and soon won an invitation to ride into the Paean cities. From their name he knew these people to be a lost colony from Pan, the sunken red land, and he was most anxious to meet them. These ships of the traders were made from a great log slowly hollowed out by fire and patiently chipping until they could hold many rowers. Even into the time of the white man have come these fleets of the traders, as Father Mercer in his travels with the explorers has so faithfully described them. Thus the healer rode northward to an extensive city in the land now known as Georgia. It once had a name which was changed to Isikowa, which means the Lord of Wind and Water. Famous all over the Americas now was the mighty master, and the people came from many miles away to see him, strewing his pathway with fragrant blossoms. Here he built a pyramid temple with the painted logs as was the Pawnee custom, and dedicated it to our Father, the Great Spirit. When he saw that the people were in a hurry to finish it, he inquired the reason and learned that a great ceremony was coming called the Thanksgiving ceremony. Concerning this, the prophet was puzzled, surrounding himself with his usual disciples, 12 in number, thus himself making 13. The dawn star's number, he inquired about the ceremony which the people wished to remember. Is it the same, he asked, as one at Panaku? They too have a Thanksgiving ceremony, only it takes place a moon later. Yes, it is the same. It celebrates the safe arrival of Vultan from the burning red land. His fleet came first to the Massachusetts, and they celebrated a moon earlier. I would hear more of the story. It is said that when the young prince of the house of Vultan with his large fleet first touched the firm earth, all did kneel and kiss the sweet ground with the grass growing on it, and send up a prayer of thanksgiving. Since that time, each place which the fleet touched in turn has its Thanksgiving ceremony. During the feast which follows, we eat of the plants which he brought with him. We eat the corn, beans, and red tomatoes, the squash, the mashed potatoes. We have the melons with the rich ripe strawberries and other berries. We drink of the delicious chocolate. For meat we have the deer, buffalo, or the bird called turkey. For all these came from the old red land, now long lost in the floods of the great destruction. When the prophet learned of this, he gave the rite his blessing, and made it one of the feasts of the temple, thus making the people very happy, for they taught of Pan as their ancient homeland.